Alright, I thought this could be a fun idea for a video. You know, draft season's just around the corner at this point, and every year I like to make a big board and talk about all the prospects and give my opinions. Well, let's look back at last year's big board that I made, and let me see kind of how it held up. Some takes have aged very well, some takes have aged very poorly, so let's get into all the takes. So let's start off with the top 10. Let's not bury the lead. Let's go with the top. I'm going to give you my top 40 prospects that I had last year. I usually do top 50, but just 41 through 50, I didn't think were that interesting, so only going to talk about the top 40 in this video. But you see, so the number next to the name is a rating out of 10. I make it out of 10, but I specifically design it in a way where I'm never going to actually have a 10 out of 10. That's kind of how I do it a little differently than the average, how most people do their ratings. But yeah, usually 9 out of 10 is like a first overall pick quality player. As you see, Caleb Williams, I gave my highest grade ever to 9.5. It did not go quite that way in his rookie year. He was not very good. So I don't really blame myself too much for this because I still do feel like his college tape was really good. But yeah, I mean, it just there's no such thing as a perfect prospect, especially when it comes to the quarterback position. Drake May, I had an 8.99, and I still kind of hang by that. We'll see what he does in the future. I'm a little bit more bearish on him than my podcast co-host Kyle, but I still feel like he could be very good. The one glaring omission, which was just a massive miss by me, was Jaden Daniels, who is not going to show up until the 20s in this list. We'll talk about it there, but that's definitely a massive misfire in hindsight. We'll talk about where I went wrong when we get there. Some other good takes, though, so far, or good picks, and many of these weren't difficult ones, but still, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, which there was some people a little bit lower on Joe Alt. He was 7th on the consensus big board. I had him at 5th. In fact, each of those 3 players I was higher on than the consensus big board, so I'll give myself credit there. Byron Murphy, interior defensive lineman for Seattle, kind of the one, I would say, real misfire early on. Rookie player, plenty of time to, sometimes interior defensive linemen take time to develop. We'll see how that goes. Also, Johnny Newton at number 7, another guy, interior defensive lineman, who I would say so far, if you spent your 6th or 7th overall pick on either of these guys, you would be pretty disappointed at this point. Roma Dunze, who was, I had an 8th, I still feel like can be very good. I still think that he did show flashes his rookie year. It maybe wasn't perfect, but I don't hate that. And worth mentioning, he was also number 8 on the consensus big board, so I was kind of right around where everybody else was there. I like my Brock Bowers pick. Again, I was a little higher on him than most. Not massively, but a little higher on him than most. And I think that he's proven to be a great player. So that's worked. And there was some pushback of like, do you draft an elite tight end prospect given the Kyle Pitts stuff? I was kind of, I feel like, I gotta pat myself on the back when I can because I have misses as well. I was very much on the, yes, still draft Brock Bowers. I know it didn't work out for Kyle Pitts. I think it will work out for Bowers. Le'Veon Latu was definitely someone I went out on a limb on. He was 17th on the consensus big board. I put him at 10th on my big board, and I think he's probably been closer to 17th than 10th, although I still do like him as a prospect. He is someone he was kind of an analytics darling coming out of college, and then kind of has stayed an analytics darling. The bulk stats haven't been great. The sacks haven't been great, but he does have very high pass rush win rate and things of that nature. So we'll see if that can translate into actually, from being an analytics darling to just being a guy who can light up a stat sheet. I certainly think it's possible. Next 10 here, the next 2 players are probably the biggest players I went out on a limb for. First, Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I had as my cornerback number 1, which was definitely a hot take. And I think Quinyon Mitchell would certainly had the better year, so I probably should have put him a couple spots higher, although you see, it was pretty similar to both of these guys. But I like what McKinstry did year 1. I think that, he kind of, I would have liked to see him in maybe a bit more of a stable situation, but I do think that when he came in, the Saints defense looked better than when he wasn't there. So I think that you deserve credit for that. Again, I don't think it was a slam dunk, 11th best prospect type of season, but I thought he played well. Probably my biggest success would be Michael Penix, who he was, many people thought could be a second round pick. On the consensus big board, he was 25th. I put him all the way up at 12. I was all in on Michael Penix. I didn't really get the criticisms, and the Falcons were even higher on him than I was. They drafted him at 8, and so far he's looked very good. Now, I'm a Tampa Bay fan. I want to be wrong about this. I want him to throw interceptions on every pass, because then I don't have to worry about Atlanta, but I think they got a good player. I think he's going to be pretty good for them, but we'll see. Talise Fuaga, he was on 13 on my board and on the consensus big board, and has kind of played like a pretty good tackle. So I think that he's been right around there on the actual, reality big board as well. Quinyon Mitchell, yeah. Some people were higher on than me, but I still liked him a lot. I'm actually looking at the consensus big board, and he was 14th on that as well. So I was kind of right around where, where everyone else was with him, and he's been very good. So yeah, we kind of all nailed that one. JJ McCarthy at 15th. I was lower on him than most. He was 5th on the consensus big board, but again, remains to be seen there. Alu Fashanu, I thought played, all right, and was in a tough situation with the Jets, so we'll see what happens there. Next up is another guy who, at 17, who I went out on a limb for. He was 31st on the consensus big board, but I was a Jackson Powers Johnson fan, and I think he showed me why. I think he had a very good rookie year, and I think has established himself as a pretty good interior offensive lineman, even having to play multiple positions in his rookie year. So, there was that time snap count misfire against the Chiefs, but other than that, I thought it was a very good rookie year for him. At 18, Chop Robinson was another guy who I went out on a limb on, and I think he, again, played well. I mean, I guess this is right around when he got drafted, but he wasn't. It depends on which big board you looked at. Some people were very high on him. Some people were not. He was 27th on the consensus big board, but I think played pretty well his rookie year. Still isn't a great run defender. We kind of knew that going in. J.C. Latham, who went 7th overall, and I think 19th is probably a more fair evaluation for him. I don't think he's had a bad rookie year. I think that he can improve and continue to get better. Did feel like a bit of a reach at 7 at the time for me. Brian Thomas Jr. was someone who, again, this is right around where most people had him, so I was kind of in lockstep with everyone else. But turns out, the few people that did go out on a limb and say he should be higher were correct, because he had a really good rookie year and has proven to be better than just 20th. So next 10 here, I'm not sure if we're going to go through each one of these in as detail as I have been, but I don't know. It's fun. Jared Verse here at 21, who, was 19th on the consensus big board. I was kind of right around where everyone else was, but clearly we were all wrong. He should have been much higher. The one reason why I'm kind of, a lot of people made fun of Atlanta for they could have had Jared Verse instead of Michael Penix, but a lot of people could have had Jared Verse, and turns out most of them should have had Jared Verse. He fell a bit in the draft, but not more than we thought he would, really. Ultimately ends up being, defensive rookie of the year by a long shot, and was, well-deserving. So, yeah, he ended up being great. Dallas Turner, I will say, I think this was a successful take by me. I was much lower on Dallas Turner than most people. He was 9th on the consensus big board. I did not have him in the top 20. I still think he could develop and get better, but I kind of felt like he was more of a developmental guy than people were giving him credit for. Nate Wiggins at 23. Yeah, he's been a very good player. That's, if anything, maybe it could be even higher than 23. Was 26th on the consensus big board. 24, we can skip over that. We don't have to talk about that too much, right? Okay, let's get into it. Why did I get Daniels so wrong? Here was my thought. I was like, well, his running is so electric in college, but I just didn't think it was going to work in the NFL, because he's not a huge guy. He's not doesn't appear to be very built. He looks skinny when you see him. The weight isn't great, so I guess that means he's not a huge guy. And I figured, okay, well, he's not going to be able to take the hits in the NFL like he did in college, and if he can't run around as much, he's not going to be as good. So I dropped him down a decent amount. Now, I still had him as a first-round talent, because I like the passing enough to make him a first-round talent just with that alone. But, it turns out that every time he gets hit, he just gets up and he's, invincible. So I should have known that he was invincible. at the end of the day, I overthought it a bit with the injury stuff. I should have paid attention to the positives he had, and because of that, I missed on him. Which, hey, it's always better to miss on someone by being too low than by being too high, because then you don't waste the draft pick on someone who stinks. You just don't draft the best player available. But in this situation, missing on Jaden Daniels, that could kill a franchise. I mean, the way that the Commanders are versus the Bears, it's just two massively different situations right now. Again, I can't blame the Bears for it because look at how I had them differently. But no doubt about it, Daniels has been great. As for picks 25 through 28, I don't know if we have to talk too much about them. Barton, Arnold, Rakestraw Jr., and DeJean. I mean, that's kind of where they all makes sense for them to end up there. Edgerrin Cooper, though, I do want to talk about at 29, as he was someone who I feel like I got to pat myself on the back a little bit for this. He was 48th on the consensus big board, rarely was showing up in any mock draft. In fact, he just wasn't showing up in mock drafts in the first round, and even some 2-round mock drafts, he wouldn't show up. He was not considered to be a massive prospect. I really liked him, though, and so I put a first-round grade on him, and he ultimately played like a first-round graded player. He had a really good rookie year, so gotta give myself a pat on the back before we get to 30, where I have to criticize myself again, because Bo Nix, who I was higher on him originally. I'm going to throw my podcast co-host Kyle under the bus here, because he definitely talked me out of this a little bit, although I never would have been super high on Bo Nix. Because he was an older prospect, and while he was very good his last year in college, he wasn't great every year in college, and it does happen. It's the Kenny Pickett thing, right? Where Kenny Pickett plays great his last year in college because he's just older than everybody else and has more experience, but he's not actually a better player, and then once he gets to the NFL level, it doesn't really work out that way. The flip side, though, is that Bo Nix is more experienced. He's able to transition easier to the NFL, and he's been able to do that. And even if you don't love his ceiling, he's clearly much better than the 30th best prospect. So definitely, quarterbacks are always hard. If you can figure out quarterbacks consistently, you be the first. We've all had massive swings and misses on the quarterback position, but still going to give my opinion the best I can and try my best, and hopefully one day I'll nail it. Finally, my next 10, and I said I would put 10 on the board. I'm not really sure why I needed to go further than top 30, but just because I said it, I'll throw these on here. Hey, Ladd McConkey at 31. He's a good player. I don't know. Most of these players are kind of around where we thought they would be, so that's where, I have them. I don't think there's anything too massive jumping out at me right now. You could say Armarius Mims, I had him at 32, where he went 18th. I was lower on him, and he didn't have a good rookie year, so I guess that's notable. Someone like Jordan Morgan as well was not someone I had, in the top 40 in my picks, and I mean, I don't know, he got injured right away. Hard to say if that worked or not. Darius Robinson, I believe I had him just in my top 50. He had a rookie year where he didn't play very good, so I guess that works out. The Dallas Cowboys at pick 29 picked Tyler Guyton, a tackle who I did not have in my top 50 period, and he ended up not having a very good rookie year, so there was that one as well. And then I think I guess the other one I would point out is I did not put Xavier Worthy on my top 50. He had a very good rookie year, so I think you can definitely look at him as a miss the other way. But yeah, as a whole, I mean, how do I evaluate my own performance, I guess? Well, my goal is always to bat 1,000, but realistically, I know that's not going to happen. The quarterbacks, it always sucks to miss on the quarterbacks because that's what everyone pays attention to. I thought I did a pretty good job outside of the quarterbacks. A couple misses, you're never going to be perfect, but some picks I like as well. But yeah, when the quarterbacks are bad, that's what people are going to notice, and fair enough. So ultimately, I think I would give myself maybe, a B for the non-quarterbacks and then a D- for the quarterbacks. I think that feels fair. Maybe an F for the quarterbacks. I mean, Jaden Daniels in the 20s, I mean, that's a disaster. Bo Nix at 30, Caleb Williams at 1. He didn't look great right away. Yeah, I guess it can't be. The Michael Penix take looked good, so I'll give myself maybe a D instead of an F, but not great there. But yeah, those are my thoughts on my thoughts from a year ago. What do you think about my thoughts from a year ago, or my thoughts that I say today? Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for watching to the end of that video. I do appreciate it. If you want to see my other channel, Jackson Kruger Movies, where I talk about movies, give some film reviews and stuff like that of a different kind, if that seems like your kind of thing, the link is in the description below for that, as is the link for my Twitter account. I'm at Jackson Kruger, so give me a follow on there if that's your kind of thing. And also, of course, remember to hit the subscribe button on this channel. I do always appreciate it, and thanks again for watching to the end of the video.